Hi guys, movie recapped queen here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today I'm going to show you a 2022 drama, thriller, horror film, named Fresh. Noah is currently on a date with Chad, a guy she met on a dating app. She's hopeful that it'll turn out well, even with bad initial impressions, because Chad reminded her to bring her own money for the date.
Did you bring cash?
Yep, you reminded me.
But unfortunately, as she expected, Chad turns out to be a not so swell guy. During their date, he keeps talking about himself, spouting misogynistic nonsense, and even disparages Noah's appearance because she chose not to dress up. At the end of the date, Chad asks her out for another meet-up, but Noah refuses. The rejection doesn't sit well for Chad, and he insults Noah before walking away. He calls her stuck up while saying that she wasn't his type anyway. During a gym boxing class, Noah opens up to her best friend, Molly, about the horrible date and laments being alone. So, Molly reassures her that she doesn't need a man. Although the statement comforts her during the moment, Noah continues swiping through dating apps when she gets home. But still, she finds zero luck. When she goes to the grocery store, she encounters Steve, who starts talking to her about cotton candy grapes. However, this was just Steve's terrible attempt at shooting his shot. Nonetheless, Noah ends up giving him her number after he asks. The next day, Noah immediately talks to Molly about the chance encounter, stating that she finds attraction in Steve. Because of the good things said by Noah about him, Molly jokes that Steve is probably married. Even then, Noah is worried that Steve still hasn't texted her. On her way home, she gets what she hopefully wishes for as Steve invites her on a night out at a bar. While drinking, they start getting to know each other, and Noah learns that Steve is a plastic surgeon. The date goes fantastically because they even end up spending the night together afterward. The next day, Noah calls Molly to share her date night experience. Because of the conversation, Molly becomes curious and wants to stalk Steve on the internet, but Noah notes that he doesn't have a single social media account. In turn, Molly tells her that's a red flag. However, Noah finds Steve too enthralling to take the statement by heart. Before they end the call, Noah mentions that she recognized their bartender from that night, someone that Molly used to hook up with. Later that night, Noah and Steve see each other again. But this time, it's a chill hangout in Noah's apartment. While they're eating takeout, Noah learns that Steve doesn't eat animals. The night ends beautifully again, to the point that when Steve invites her to a surprise weekend trip, she doesn't hesitate to agree. When she calls Molly about the trip, her best friend is immediately worried because she doesn't even know the location. But still, Noah is really into Steve, so she doesn't overthink it. For the trip, Steve picks up Noah. He tells her that they'll stay at his place before driving early the next day because he checked the traffic conditions ahead of time. As they arrive at his place, Noah is immediately awed by the opulence of his home, not even feeling off that it's in the middle of nowhere. While looking around, Noah notices that there's no cell signal, and Steve tells her that his Wi-Fi must have gone out. As they talk, Steve gives her a cocktail he mixed, which she drinks right away. Steve keeps talking about their weekend trip, but Noah starts feeling woozy. Although she tries to fight the dizziness, she ends up passing out. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a different room with Steve sitting away from her. She asks what happened, so Steve immediately says he drugged Noah. At first, she thought he was joking. However, when she tries to stand up, she sees her hands chained to the floor. She tries pleading for Steve to take the handcuffs off, but he won't do so. She starts freaking out while Steve tries to say something to her, making him shout for her to listen. It turns out Steve sells human meat and intends to sell Noah's. However, he sells the meat fresh, so he intends to keep her alive for as long as possible. When Steve leaves Noah's cell room, she starts screaming for help and hears someone answer in the other room. She starts pleading for help, but the other girl, Penny, tells her that they're in the same boat. Because she's been here longer, Penny has lost all construct of time and tells Noah that she's slowly being eaten away by Steve's customers. On the other hand, Molly starts feeling off about Noah's condition. Although Steve has been replying to her texts through Noah's phone, she starts feeling more suspicious with the conversation. When she couldn't find anything on Steve's vague background, she reverse searches the image that Steve sent from Noah's phone. Much to her alarm, Molly stumbles upon the image on Google, finding out that it's not a picture Noah took. Meanwhile, Steve tries to get Noah to eat, but she wouldn't touch her food. Although he still tries to treat her warmly, it doesn't translate well due to the circumstances. Noah asks to shower, so Steve walks her to the bathroom. However, Noah has different plans because as soon as they start walking in the hallway, she tries to escape. Angered, Steve knocks her unconscious. When Noah wakes up, she finds herself on an operating table, with Steve telling her it's her punishment for being bad. Finally experiencing the whole of Steve's cruelty, Noah gets her butt taken for him to sell. On the other hand, Molly goes to see Paul, the bartender that served Noah and Steve on their first date. She asks for Steve's identification, but Paul is obligated not to spill such confidential information because he might get fired. Molly leaves but hopes that Paul will change his mind. Back in Noah's cell, she keeps confiding in Penny about Steve. They find comfort in each other, so Noah admits that she slept with Steve. This surprises Penny because she hasn't heard of any other victim that slept with him. At night, Molly is still at work when she receives a text from Paul, giving in to her request. After finding Steve's full name, she immediately searches for him on Facebook and finds Anne, Steve's wife. It turns out he's indeed married and has 2 kids. The next day, Molly goes straight to their address to look for Noah, even sending her location to Paul in case things go awry. Meanwhile, Noah has been given magazines to entertain her while still being kept in her cell. Although Steve visits her from time to time, she ignores him completely. But Penny's remark was bugging her mind, so Noah asks why Steve slept with her. He admits that he likes Noah but tells her that it was a mistake. As Steve leaves, Noah notices a note in the magazine. A previous victim left encouraging words between the pages, saying, "If you're reading this, it means he likes you. Use it." Noah heeds the advice and starts warming up to Steve. She even asks what human meat tastes like. Steve gives her a sincere answer, yet inquisitive about why Noah would even ask such a question. Nonetheless, he lets it be. On the other hand, Molly confronts Anne, Steve's wife, about Noah's situation. Although they sit down to talk about it, Anne seems innocent regarding the whole situation, not believing that her husband would be cheating on her. Steve arrives home, seeing Anne and Molly together, but he keeps his cool. As they send her away, Molly calls Noah's phone, only to find out that Steve has it. Now that her theory has been confirmed, the couple has no choice but to capture Molly, so Anne knocks her out from behind. Back in the cell, Steve goes straight to Noah and asks why she was curious about the human meat. Despite thinking it was odd, Steve invites Noah for dinner and even gives her a change of clothes. Back at his own home, Steve tells Anne that he'll be busy the next night for work stuff. He then compliments Anne for being a good accomplice by taking out Molly. Steve asks about their children and gives Anne a quick kiss before leaving. As Anne takes a shower, she takes off her clothes, revealing a prosthetic leg. As the time for their meal together arrives, Steve cooks something special for Noah, human meat. They share a quiet time over some wine where she asks about Steve's background, inquiring how he got into such an occupation. Steve tells the simple story of his discovery, saying that he was able to try it one time and became addicted to the taste. Afterward, he found people in the same boat as him, so he made a name for himself in the industry, delivering products to those willing to pay for them. For their meal, Steve places a meatball pasta in front of her. Despite the cruelty of where it came from, Noah forces herself to try the meat. As she chews it carefully, Noah doesn't act repulsed and swallows it down, even commenting on the taste, saying that it's indescribable. After he brings her back to her room, Steve goes to someone else's cell, Molly's, and proceeds to do surgery on her as well. Meanwhile, Paul has finally started to feel that something is off and plans to follow the location that Molly sent him. On the other hand, it seems like Noah's plan is working because Steve comes back the next night with a gift. He gives her a lovely dress and asks her for dinner once more, which she accepts. Before leaving, he even gives her some makeup supplies so she can freshen up. The two dress up well before having a more romantic candlelit dinner with human meat again. After the first course, Steve shows her a hidden shelf behind a painting, where he hides all his victims' possessions and identification. She even sees a picture of Penny. However, she notices that her stuff isn't amongst the shelves, so Steve tells her that it's with him. When she notes the location of the cell phones, she sees Molly's phone. Although this bugs her mind, she tries to keep up the nonchalant act. As they savor the final course of the meal, Noah starts crying, expressing guilt that she doesn't feel horrible despite eating human meat. This brings down Steve's walls, wanting to comfort her. Although he kisses her, he doesn't forget to handcuff her after the meal. Afterward, she invites him to dance. With the sweet ambiance of their date, they end up going to bed together. But beforehand, Noah goes to the bathroom for a bit. When Noah returns, she starts going down and feigns giving him a head, but she just bites off his groin instead. He screams in sudden torment, giving Noah the opportunity to wipe toothpaste on his eyes. She manages to steal his keys and uncuff herself before locking Steve inside his own room. Noah runs for dear life and goes straight to Molly, chained and gagged. She sets her free before coming to save Penny, who's missing a leg. With Steve on their tail, the three try to escape while assisting Penny. They manage to ambush him in the kitchen, attacking together to save themselves from the dire situation. Even though it's a 3 versus 1, Steve is doing well in fighting against them. However, when he tries to pin down Noah, Penny crawls towards them and stabs Steve on the leg. In the end, Molly manages to knock Steve out with a kick on the face. Before taking their chance to run, Noah makes sure to retrieve their cell phones. As the three run outside, they find trouble running due to Penny's missing leg. Because of this, Steve somehow catches up behind them, now armed with a gun. Meanwhile, Paul has just arrived at Steve's address, but he already feels off about the situation. When he hears the gun, he doesn't hesitate to back off the driveway and leave completely. A little while later, Anne arrives after failing to get in touch with Steve. After seeing the bloody remnants of the kitchen fight and hearing Steve's gunshots, she goes to look for Steve outside. Outside, Steve tries looking for Noah and sees her hiding among the trees after her phone lights up. Molly notices this and doesn't hesitate to tackle Steve to the ground to save her friend. With him on the ground, they start ganging up on him until Noah shoots him in the head with his own gun. They try to run to safety, narrowly missing Anne, who finally comes across Steve's body. However, Noah returns to the woods to look for her phone, leaving Penny to Molly's care. Unfortunately, this time, Anne sees her. She pretends to be one of Steve's victims, but Noah isn't falling for her tricks. Still, Anne is able to pin her down. As the woman starts choking her, Noah stabs her in the neck with keys. Despite this, Anne is still standing and manages to slam Noah against a tree. But Molly comes to her aid with a shovel, angrily smashing Anne's head repeatedly. The two recuperate against a tree as Noah receives a text from Chad, asking if she's awake. Thank you for watching.